Yeah. Are you Con, you're doing the water bucket challenge, but it's the water tower challenge. What's up, guys? This is Ice, and today we're watching Con get wet.
In a shower with his clothes on. Oh boy, can you handle it?
Yeah, so
don't worry, later we're gonna turn this to steam.
It's true, it's gonna get hot in here. So fun fact, if you actually stand under the water tower, like if you were to actually pull the spout cable and make water come out and like do the thing, you would almost get knocked down. Like the flow of water is insane.
Yeah, it would be insane. Yeah,
yeah.
The height difference from there, like MGH, man, MGH.
Listen to the Bernoulli, man. The Bernoullis. Do the Bernoullis.
Mr. Bernoulli's like, it was funny. The other day, I was explaining Bernoulli's principle to a friend of mine, and I was like, because I was explaining how an injector worked, and I was like, bro, pressure 1, pressure 2, Bernoulli's principle. You add an MKV factor in there, it was MV squared, right, over 2, right? That's you got your kinetic energy factor. Bernoulli's got to balance out. You got the pressure head on the what was it? It's density times gravity times height or whatever.
Yeah, the pressure. Yeah. No, that's just the head.
That's the head.
The head, and then you've got the pressure head and then velocity head.
Velocity head's what is it's QV squared, isn't it? Like flow rate Q times.
I think so, dude. It has been. I took a year of fluids.
I don't remember, man.
It's been a while. I'm gonna have to grab my textbook because we are vaguely being engineering professors at this point. So
yeah, I know. Bernoulli's principle. Hold on, let me see what this is.
Yeah, what's the vibe of Con and Heist playing Railroads Online? Well, two dudes talk about trains, and it's kind of like your nerdy physics professors went to the bar and started forgetting what they were supposed to be saying a little bit and tried to talk about concepts.
Incompressible flow equation, the densities cancel out, right. So incompressible flow, which is what we're talking about.
Water is incompressible.
V squared over 2 plus GZ plus P over rho equals constant, where V squared is your fluid flow speed over 2, right? Because it would be mv squared over 2, so it's v squared over 2 plus gravity, which is acceleration to gravity 9.814 for all the people who live on planet Earth at sea level, and c is the elevation above the point, and then p being your pressure over the density has to be equal to a constant. So on both sides of the equation, it has to balance out.
Yeah. So as you add the velocity, as you condense the water in, guess what? You were able to kick the check valve open.
Right, and pressure can stay the same on both sides. It doesn't matter. If you add velocity on one side, you'll have to create an opposing thing on the other. For example, you could add velocity to go up in height, or you could use height to add velocity, or whatever. But it only works if you look at it as a closed system, obviously.
Yep, and at the point where an injector is trying to put water in, it is a closed system. So there you go.
Right, and I'm pretty sure in that case, because you have like 4 connections going to the injector, it's Bernoulli's principle balances on all 4 ports. So if you have velocity going out one versus the other, it's like a summation of the all equals the same constant value, I'm pretty sure.
I would have to think about it with my engineering brain on, but I think you're right.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure if I remember my fluids was like 3rd year, so for me that was a long time ago.
Yes, yeah, same. Not quite as long for me. I remember you were talking about going on dates in the 1970s. So mine was at least this century, but yeah.
Back when I was taking fluids, it was only in what was it? Those abacus? Is that what it is?
An abacus? Did you sit behind Jesus in the 3rd grade?
Yeah, no, for sure. Yeah, it was. Yeah.
Old man Con over here.
What happened? Actually, I knew the guy who invented fire. True story. Okay?
Dude,
I met him once,
bro, that must have been hot.
Yeah, he was just a bro. Anyway, we should probably start this episode.
I guess we should probably do a thing. Last time you wouldn't let me use your intro, so what's up, guys? This is Heist. Today we're playing Railroads Online with my buddy Con.
I thought we were using the seductive intros that we just did.
Well,
that's I was.
You've heard of first intro, but what about second intro? 11sies?
True.
Tea time?
Or third intro?
Okay, so Con, I hear pray tell that you have enough money for a train.
I do. What did we name our Central, Rio, and Pacific, right?
Central, Rio, and Pacific.
Colorado something, and then I was like, I can't. Good. Okay, it does fit Central, Rio, ampersand, Pacific. But I need a period on the tender.
Gotta have the period. We're being period correct. Wink.
That barely fits, but it fits, so we'll call it. Number 3 because Fibonacci. So we have 1, 1, 2, 3.
Yep.
what is the name of what do you want to call the Glenbrook?
God, what do we want to call the Glenbrook?
To the Glenbrook. Okay, so first, what do you know about the Glenbrook Baldwin Locomotive Works? Built in what year?
You're like, what do you know? But now I'm gonna start filling in the facts.
Well, last time I did this, I checked your video afterwards. I noticed you had already pulled up the engine screen, and then I started asking you facts about the engine. So I was like, oh my god, like he already knows.
Well, I mean, I knew those facts off the top of my head in the last video, actually,
sure,
but
sure.
I don't have the engine screen up. You can fact check me later. You can watch my video. You can steal my intros, all the fun stuff.
Anyway, what do you know?
Glenbrook, 1875.
1874.
1870. Is it 1874? Really? Okay.
That's what it says. Yeah, 1874.
Kyume might be wrong on that one. I could swear it's 1875.
It looks like a bigger Eureka.
It is actually the same boiler and chassis as the Eureka. They just said, what if we made one of the 4 lead wheels a driver instead?
So instead of it being a 440, it's a 260.
Correct. A mogul, yeah.
So it has more tractive effort as a result, or?
It has more ability for adhesion. It does also have more tractive effort, and I'm not entirely certain how it gets the additional tractive effort compared to the Eureka. It might be boiler pressure, and I looked it up. Kyume is wrong in the video game. It is March of 1875.
Boiler pressure's the same, by the way. I think it's piston size. If you look at the
boiler pressure
piston,
being the same.
It's a bigger diameter piston. The drivers look the same, but the piston looks much.
Okay, the piston might be bigger. Yeah, that does make sense.
Anyway, it's number 3 on the tender, Central Rio and Pacific. Yes, I have to redo that again. What do you want to call it? What do you want to name this bad boy?
I don't know what we want to call the Glenbrook.
Stacks, these all, well, they don't cost money. I'm sorry. For me, like, I understand the big, like, flame arresters, spark arresters, right? And they're, like, big bulbous cone things.
Yeah, they would be literally necessary for a wood-burning locomotive. It would be disastrous to run without one.
Straight pipe just looks so much cooler, though.
Straight pipe is a very cool vibe. I like the straight pipe. But yeah, God, Glenbrook's got all kinds of options for stacks. And the one that you're going to have to peruse is that I know that Glenbrook has a ton of paint schemes. Like different line work, different accent colors, all sorts of cool stuff. Daniel spent a lot of time making a lot of different really cool paints for this thing.
I would put a different headlight on it, except they're all oil burners, which is...
Yeah, they're all oil headlights. There's not an electric headlight in the game, except for the Climax.
They're all more expensive.
I think. Yeah.
The Heisler has an electric headlight.
Does it still? Because the Heisler got backdated.
Oh, okay. It had an electric headlight in the previous version of this game. I don't know if it still does.
It did, but it got backdated. It's got an oil light now. Yeah.
Okay, so names for this. All right, paint scheme 3 is a little bit of red, which looks nice. The red's cool. Purple outlining the tender. Wow, that looks very fluorescent. They've got
the Baldwin Styles catalog was very prevalent in this era, making engines really pretty. You could order engines in one of several hundred styles that were standardized styles of, okay, well, this wheels are this, they have these inlays, domes are this, spoilers this, blah, blah, blah. They're really neat. I'm actually working on doing a video with my good buddy Armagon about the history of the Baldwin styles for the channel at some point, talking about all of the different possible paint schemes you could have ordered a choo-choo from Baldwin back in the day. And so I don't have a preference on what we named the Glenbrook. It's called the Glenbrook in the game because that's one of the operational ones. It's actually interesting for this engine being as old as it is. Both of the engines in this class delivered to this railroad still exist, and they both still run. The Glenbrook itself, and then its sister, the Tahoe. And I've seen them both, actually, in Nevada at the Great Western Steam Up. They're really neat locomotives. The Tahoe got modernized and burns oil these days, but the Glenbrook went out of service early and then just kind of stayed around. They never took it out of service, or they never scrapped it or anything. So
how do you spell T-A-H-O-E?
T-A-H-O-E, Tahoe, yeah. So if we want to be historic, that'd be a fun way to do it.
What, call it the Tahoe?
Yeah, we could.
I was going to call it Tahoe's Bro, but it doesn't fit, and I'm very disappointed.
The Tahoe Bro?
Tahoe Bro?
Tahoe Bro. That's a little silly.
You know, I'm not mad at calling it the T-A-H-O Bro, like Tahoe Bro.
Tahoe Bro.
Tahoe Bro.
Okay, that's
it's gonna happen. Also, I'm going with this color scheme because it gets rid of all the accent pieces on the tender, and I think it just makes the tender writing look a little cleaner.
Well, we want to make sure that it says things.
So there you go. Look at
that. Ooh, the Tahoe Bro.
Tahobro.
Tahobro. Yeah, it's the Choo-Choo. Look at it.
It's number 3 on the line, so it's. I mean, you might as well fire it up, I guess. It's. It looks beautiful.
This model's beautiful. I don't have much experience with it. Actually, I haven't yet to have it on a save. I've only seen it on a friend's save in Railroads Online. So I've not really spent any time with it. This is beautiful.
Oh, I like all the gold, like valves and stuff. That's
really cool. In this era, almost everything in the cab was brass. And so everything's brass and polished.
Why would I say gold? Yeah, no,
it's gold colored, but yeah.
We're not gold adonishing.
We're not that fancy.
Yeah.
Well, actually, the lettering.
Why is there a can of oil on a shelf just chilling here? You see that?
On the Pine Valley Manufacturing Company right there?
Yeah, just the can of.
That's the oil can shelf.
Lubricant.
That's where the oil cans go. Usually, there's more than one. On our engines, we usually have three cans of oil.
Above a super hot firebox, like that's just normal.
It's a 680 weight oil. It doesn't flow unless it's hot. Have you never steam engined, bro?
So it's literally like a thick oil that has like a 400-degree flash point or something, and you just keep it there so it actually
flows. Yeah. So usually on our engines, we have typically 3 oil cans on them, and they live on the oil can shelf. That's what it's called, and it's right above the fire door usually. Can be in some different places on the engines depending on configuration. But we have this, which is valve oil in what's called a tallow pot, which is the fancy name for that type of oil can. And the ones we use is a 680 weight oil so that it flows vaguely like 30 weight or 40 weight, heavier duty, when it's at steam temperatures in a steam engine, right? Because remember, when you've got a mixture of water and steam under pressure in the boiler, it's not boiling at 212 Fahrenheit or 100 Celsius. It's boiling at much higher than that. And so the steam is really hot, and you got to be able to lubricate the engine with that heat, so that's a super heavy oil. We also usually have a pin, bearing, and journal oil, PB&J, and a long neck oil can, because on these little engines, there's actually a lot of points that can't be hard greased or soft greased, that you actually, like every pivot point within the valve gear, you have to oil manually with an oil can.
Right, but you would stop them before you.
Oh yeah, you stop the engine to do that. Yeah, you got to get really in there.
They're just keeping it there just to keep it warm, but you stop, get out, do all your
precisely. You oil around is the industry term.
The injector's right here.
Yeah, injector's out underneath the floor. Yeah.
And that would be actually the spot for this.
That is actually where they mounted it on the engine. The gentleman who modeled this engine, Daniel, operates the real one. So he's got very good reference for it.
Wow.
And then on the other side, we have the crosshead pump, which is usually what you'd use unless you were stationary. So this is actually a mechanical water pump that runs off of the crosshead. So as the piston moves back and forth, it takes water from the tender tank and mechanically forces it up through this check valve.
Wait, so that's how it gets water from the tender into the thing?
Yeah.
It uses the motion.
It uses the motion as a pump. It's a literal mechanical pump. So as we move, it's always putting water in.
Cool.
Yeah. It's one of the old pieces of tech.
So they'd use that with the injector. They do both.
The injector was if you needed more water or if you were stationary. But otherwise, usually the crosshead pump would keep up with things. Some engines only had crosshead pumps. And it was common. They didn't have injectors because injectors took a minute to figure out and manufacture and everything. So it was actually kind of a common practice on the railroad in the early days to grease the tracks and move the engines, while they were vaguely stationary, make them slip so that they could put more water in.
Wow. So you'd literally do an engine burnout just to get water.
Hey, Con. Amazing. Hey, look at the builder's plate on the smoke box. See what year it says?
1875.
Yep. See, that's actually a replica of Glenbrook's real plate.
Oh, but in the game it says 1874.
Yeah, the game's wrong, but the builder's plate on the engine itself is actually correct.
Air compressor.
Yep, that's actually a modern addition for Glenbrook. Glenbrook never got an air compressor, but this is where I believe Tahoe had hers. The Tahoe got one, so.
It has an air compressor. Oh, there's the air compressor hand valve. Gotcha. Let's open that.
This is her first engine with air brakes. People will stop yelling at us. I have so many comments. Oh, you need to come back for your tender, sir? I have so many.
This engine has air brakes, remember?
Yeah, you gotta.
What do air brakes have to do?
They need air. They need air to work.
Yeah, they need to be pressurized.
How's that stopping going?
It didn't stop.
That's fine. Yeah,
This thing takes off though, man. Like it really goes.
Does it? I'm excited.
It's got some speed. So okay, so it's got an air brake system, which you're saying isn't accurate at the time. So I'm assuming these reservoir tanks on the side of the cab here, those are air brake tanks that probably would be on the original.
They are air brake tanks that would not be on the original as delivered, Glenbrook and Tahoe, but Tahoe did get retrofitted to have all those things and got them in modernity when it got converted to burn oil. But yeah, this thing scoots. Oh god, it looks good. It's a beautiful model.
I love the fact that they literally took a Eureka and threw an extra set of drivers on it.
Right, like that's almost exactly what it is. And I believe you're right. I think that the cylinders are a smidge bigger. And there's other differences. Wider. And I'm sure that Daniel will probably watch this and he'll probably send me a million messages about everything else that I got wrong. But you know, it's a beautiful
I will admit,
engine.
From the front, it does look like a much beefier engine than the Eureka because it does have those wider cylinders and just wider everything, wider valve sections and stuff.
Right.
You want to flick that switch behind us there before we?
Sure. I wasn't sure if we needed to shove back here or if we're going to the
we're
yard.
going to forget about it, and then we're going to come back in it like a million
Oh,
miles an hour
I see.
You know what I'm saying?
You're just gonna make me run?
Sorry,
You're just making me run? Just okay, it's fine. It's fine.
Let me just do a
It's
little
fine.
bit
Okay. All right. The jokes continue. Thanks, Con. Thanks. I thought we were friends. I'm still running down the tracks.
Get on? I don't understand.
I'm working on it. Okay. The train's moving fast.
Well, while you're off the train, do you want to throw this on the switch?
I guess I can throw this switch. Well, while I'm chasing you.
Brakes work now, surprisingly.
Oh, that's good.
The brakes are.
Yeah, it's good that we've got air pressure now. The air brakes work. Yeah, the engines that we've had so far, Betsy, no air brakes, right? Just the manual brake. And then we've got the Montezuma and then the Class 48, which have brakes modeled on them for the sake of gameplay, but they have no air compressor or air system. So like the compressor control doesn't work. There's no hand valve. So people who are saying, oh, you left the compressor off, that's why your brakes aren't that good. No, that's how they work in the game, and the brakes aren't that good because they're not air brakes.
Shouldn't have even had brake shoes in real life, right? They were water brakes or...
Right, they didn't have brake shoes or anything, but it was just added just for the sake of gameplay, which is a respectable decision, honestly, because it's not fun to play without brakes.
Modern cars, right? We say air brakes a lot, like you've got an air braking system, right?
Yes.
But we never talk about what that is. Because is it still shoes? Is it a disc? Is it a drum? Is it
It is shoes, which is basically like a drum brake, unless you're talking about really modern passenger cars, in which case, yes, it's also disc brakes.
But it's shoes on the outside of the wheel still.
Yes. Yeah, precisely.
That push on the wheel.
We are dragging poor Betsy along.
Yeah, well, she's got to go back to the smelter.
Then come back, because I didn't realize we were doing that and I cut her off.
Yeah, well, she's the smelter engine, unless you...
Okay, well, I mean, I guess I can go get her.
Yeah, you can just bring her.
I'll chase you.
We're bringing.
Fine.
I guess we never explained what we were doing. We just sort of went off on a tangent.
We just went on the most tangents of tangents. Welcome to Intro 3. We serve tea with this one.
We've been recording for a little bit of time here now, and we're just leaving the freight depot. This is a record, to be honest.
We got lots of stuff to say, okay?
But Tahobro, maiden voyage, just really, really kicking it off here. Engine number 3 going down the track. Toot, toot.
Toot, toot. If you whistled, I couldn't hear it.
Oh, good, perfect. Yeah, no, so we're going to go pick up cordwood, because we always need cordwood at the smelter, because it's just a terrible experience. And then we're dragging 4 stake flats with us. And we'll load those up with the rails we have at the smelter and bring them back up the hill on our way back to the freight depot, because we might as well make the most of this trip.
Right, making money both directions, folks. We're getting crazy.
I'm back down to $100.
It turns out locomotives are expensive.
Yeah, I don't know how much money you have, but I'm at $100.
I have 447.
I don't mind not driving. What's up?
I was just gonna come hang out.
Do you have an engineer on the train? The engineer runs the train the whole time, never gets off the controls ever, or do they swap at all? Is that a thing?
It depends.
If you're like, hey, I'm tired, I need... Like, what happens if you're like going on a 2-hour train thing and you're the engineer and you need to pee? Like,
well, it depends. I mean, a lot of times, yes, the engineer will have the conductor sit in modern days. Had the engineer sit in the conductor's seat while he, the conductor sit in the engineer's seat while he uses the restroom or something. In the olden days, a lot of times the engineer would show the firemen a couple things and have the firemen run for a little bit so they could start to learn how to handle the train on the railroad. We gotta throw a switch? Oh, that's right, we do. I guess I can
Okay, and then
put a little break
part
on.
2 of this question, now that I'm thinking about it, where would you go pee on an old school railroad?
Off the side?
You just off the side.
Yeah.
What happens if you need to do something that's not necessarily peeing, but still involves going to the bathroom?
You have a coal shovel and a furnace, my friend.
You're serious? That's
That's what you got, bro.
Oh no, that sounds terrible.
I have heard awful stories about that actually happening in the modern day on tourist roads, where someone just had a big smile on their face with their bibs down and the coal scoop between their legs, and and then in the fire it went, and I'm sure that was real not pleasant for 30 seconds.
The draft brings it out the front. At least there's that. But
yeah, well, poop. You've heard of poop hits the fan. Well, this is poop hits the locomotive. So.
Yeah, that's I can't believe that's the.
Yeah, no toilets. The toilets on cars on the trains just dumped out on the track.
Like just open.
It was just there was just a hole. There was nothing. There was just a hole at the bottom of like a normal looking toilet bowl. So there were signs on the bathroom doors that said, "Do not use the restroom while in station," so that you didn't end up smelling up the station platform for the next set of people. But yeah, MOW wasn't necessarily a fun job back in the day.
Oh my god. I'm sorry I asked now.
Yep. Yeah. Turns out we did not build poopers and things in these things.
Okay, so now modern locomotives, modern diesel engines and stuff, do they have like a little porta potty in them?
They have basically a little porta potty. Yeah.
With a tank. And like modern passenger cars obviously have tanks for all the fluids.
Precisely. There's tanks for everything. The diesel locomotives, I mean, they've got in the nose of the diesel, in the front end is usually where it's placed. On the way to the entry on the big engines, or actually in the little nose compartment with a little stairwell to them on the smaller engines. And it's basically like a recreational vehicle or an RV style toilet where the tank's built into it. And then there's like a little pipe off the side with a valve so that the tanks can be emptied. And one of my most hilarious days working for the Class 1 Railroad, working for BNSF, is a story I've told on the channel once, but it was almost a year ago now, so for those of you who are new, here we go. We had the BNSF 1676 show up at the Roundhouse, and I still remember that road number because it's burned into my brain at this point. This engine comes to the Roundhouse, and it had a defect, and the defect system that we had on the railroad was like, it had level 1 to level 9, and 1 meant you couldn't move the engine, it was so broken. 9 meant, okay, it was a little minor thing, whatever, and 8 meant that you couldn't have someone in the cab or couldn't operate from the cab. So it had a level 8 defect that just said smelly toilet. Okay, well, we know what to do with that, right? We just clean the toilet. Okay, great. So it comes from Pasco, Washington to Seattle, Washington, a couple 100 miles. And my laborer goes and he brings the toilet dump cart to it, hooks it up and everything. And he calls me on the radio after he's done. He goes, "Hey boss, we got a problem with the 1676. Well, what do you mean? Well, so the toilet was full to the brim, like in the bowl and everything, like it was nasty. And so I hooked up the dump cart and I dumped the toilet. And then I dumped the dump cart, but nothing came out the dump cart. So I went back to the engine and there was nothing in the toilet. And so I radioed back to him and I go, so where'd the poop go? And he goes, I don't know. That's the problem. This needs to come to the Roundhouse for somebody to look at. Okay.
Oh
so we bring it up from the service track to the Roundhouse. And I send for a pipe fitter whose jobs are to deal with the toilets, unfortunately. And I tell him the story, and he's like, okay, well, yeah, it's like probably the connection probably broke off or something. You know, I'll take the toilet off and I'll see what I can see. Takes the toilet off, and he comes back, and he's like, yeah, the dump pipe off the bottom of the toilet tank is broken off, and it's lying in the ground, in the frame. It's called the air plenum on these old engines. It's where the air flows to the traction motors and stuff.
So you filled the engine with poop, is what you're saying?
Yeah, so he had to cut the floor out of the locomotive to retrieve the pipe, and so he cuts the floor out. He comes into my office with earplugs in his nose. I was the supervisor at that time. Comes into the office with earplugs in his nose, and he just goes, "You need to come say this, and no, I'm not fixing it." And it's like, okay. So I go, and I put the tag on my flag, make sure that I got protection, because I'm going to be working on a locomotive, whatever. Establish your protection before you get on. Get on the engine, I climb down the steps into the nose, and like, you get into the cab, and you were just hit with the most vile, disgusting smell you have ever smelled. Ever. Like
it was level 8, bro.
It was level 8. It was late. It was 30. It was 36 cars.
Why you thought? Yeah, I don't know why you thought it would be less than level 8. I mean, it was level 8, man.
Dude, it was. Where are you going? Where are you going with those?
I'm gonna go down to the smelter and load these up with iron. So when you get there, we're like.
Oh, dude, I see this handoff. Okay.
Yeah.
So
Good luck. You can load cut on your own. I think. I believe in you.
I can figure it out.
Workplace safety. Please don't crush yourself with the crane.
Don't crush myself with the crane, and don't have locomotives full of poop. Got it.
Yeah.
So, what I saw was the entire underneath the floor of the nose of the SD40, entirely full of poop and pee and everything. It was disgusting, like 18 inches deep, the size of a pool table. Billiards table.
What I don't understand about, and this is I used to work at a hockey rink, right?
Okay.
So
how Canadian of you, sir?
Yeah, when I was in high school, I worked at a hockey rink, so Zambonis and all that stuff. But like part of working at a hockey rink is not as glorious, and that's you have to clean toilets in change rooms, right? And I never understood how people let the toilets get to the condition they're in before they call somebody for help.
So there was one particular reason why this happened to this engine, and I asked the same exact question. I was like, how did it get this bad? How could you put up with this smell? Are you kidding me?
Right.
And it turned out that it was the partner engine to a hump yard locomotive at the Pasco hump yard. And the Pasco hump yard locomotives are remote control locomotives where they're run with basically like an Xbox controller that's strapped to your belt.
So a ghost pooped in the toilet?
No. So the only time an engineer was ever in the engine was when he had to go poop.
Right,
so he bared this.
So you go into poop and you're like, man, it smells really bad in here. The toilet's overflowing. Whatever. I'm just gonna poop anyway.
So it wasn't overflowing right up until this time when it got like absolutely full and there was no other place for it to go. Is the thing.
But who was the guy that put the last poop? It wasn't partially full.
Who are you?
Yeah, someone was there before
the last
zero.
Poop. Yeah.
It was like, we can avoid this if I call somebody.
Yep, they could have, but it was one of those things like, okay, the only reason it got this long was because they only went into poop and they're like, man, it's smelly, but it's like, okay, smelly train, whatever. Now I'm back outside running the Xbox controlled locomotive thing.
Unbelievable.
Right?
Unbelievable.
So the story gets better where in order to deal with this sort of thing, like, we can't ask any employee to clean this up. Like, this is human waste. This is biohazard. So we called a biohazard cleanup company to come out and deal with it. And so they
didn't want to do it? Is that what it was?
No, so we tell them the whole story all over the phone, and they're like, okay, we'll send somebody out. A couple hours later, Ford Mustang rolls up into the parking lot, parks up by the office, and this guy is walking into my office, shaking sleep out of his eyes, and he's like, hey man, they called me in on my day off. They said you had a toilet for me to look at. And I was like, oh, buddy, it is not no, just come look. And so I showed him, and he just went, yeah, I'm gonna need backup. And so he calls for backup. Vacuum truck, equipped to the nines and everything shows up with a very attractive lady operating it who ended up helping clean it out by hand. And I still wonder to this day why she had the job at a biohazard cleaning company, whatever. But they had to end up cleaning it out by hand because there was no way for them to get the vacuum thing in. So they literally by hand cleaned this whole mess out. And it took them like 4 or 5 hours. They dry heaved and came out, took their respirators off and everything, dry heaved like 5 or 6 times. I felt so awful, but it's like, oh, this is the thing, right? And all said and done, they had to bill us out for, their time and the waste disposal and everything. And so they hand me the sheet at the end to sign off on as the supervisor. And it was literally 2,000 pounds. So it was a literal poop ton. So if you ever need a character reference for what a poop ton looks like, you call your buddy Heiss, because I got you covered.
That's so incredibly gross.
Dude, it was, yeah. It's one of those moments, like, you don't ever anticipate that to be something that you learn about and experience on the railroad. But there we were.
I only have one like significant poop story in my entire life, which is unfortunate because I feel like I should have more poop stories.
You need to eat more Taco Bell.
Yeah, well, it's not a poop story involving me. That's the thing. So it's like, I worked at a hockey rink, which is a true story. It legitimately happened in high school. Everyone was working at like McDonald's and stuff, and I was actually working at a hockey rink, which was super cool. But you do deal with a lot of like really like, I don't know how to say this politically correct, but really stupid hockey players. Let's put it that.
So you're telling me that the TV shows are correct in their portrayal of them?
Some of them get hit too many times into the boards, okay? Let's put it that way.
There is probably brain damage, yeah.
There probably is. But anyway, so there's this one tournament I remember, and this one team lost the tournament, and every hockey dressing room had one toilet stall in it and one urinal, right? And then a shower area. And the change rooms weren't like huge, like big enough for one hockey team, right? But the urinal was like out in the open, so like, you know, if you were at the urinal, then everyone in the change room could see your back, right? Like you're facing the wall, obviously, but the toilet stall was its own stall. Anyway, some team lost a tournament and someone pooped in the urinal. That was their response to losing.
I've seen this episode of South Park.
Right, so I literally walked into my boss's office and I was like, that team just left. And he's like, yeah. And I'm like, I'm not cleaning their dressing room. And he's like, why not? And I'm like, just come look with me. So he comes and looks at me, sees the poop in the toilet. And my boss, I'd never seen him get this angry in my life ever. And he just like storms out, doesn't say anything to me, walks into his office. He calls the coach up on the phone and he's like, listen, you're coming back here and cleaning this or you're never getting ice time like anywhere ever for like your team. It's
oh
just
my
not gonna
God.
happen. I would call every arena and make sure. So this coach comes back, gets his players to clean it. And you know, and they cleaned it and all that. And we didn't have to touch the dressing room, and great. And his players all apologized, whatever. No one admitted who pooped. But my only question of the whole scenario is who was the kid sitting in the urinal facing the whole team pooping? Like which kid? Like the way these rooms were laid out, you had to be facing your whole team while pooping into the urinal, or like, you know, poop facing the wall somehow, which just wasn't gonna, you know what I mean? Like it's
somebody took a dookie in the urinal.
That's what I mean, and everyone watched him do it.
Oh my God!
You know, I don't. Anyway, that's my only story. So I didn't clean it, thank God. But yeah, it was pretty bad.
Lordy, yeah, that's an adventure.
Yeah. Good episode this week, Heist. Good chat.
Yeah, what are we talking about on this episode of Railroads Online? We talking about injectors work, fun railroad things. No, we're talking about poop.
Yeah. Yeah, no, so it's good. I'm glad we have these chats. It's good that we discuss beforehand what we're going to talk about and write a good script out and really
fine.
Plan these things ahead.
Really
so
plan it
out.
Talking
about poop the whole time.
Well, hey, I bet people are laughing. I bet it worked.
Maybe.
Maybe not. Maybe everyone will hate us.
It's funny after the fact, but
that's yeah. The day of the 1676. Yeah, that was not a fun day. That was not a fun day for my pipe fitter. Like I was management. I didn't have like anything to do with it other than seeing it and being like, that is disgusting, and then coordinating things. Like I had the least worst day out of everyone, but. Yeah, poor pipe fitter and those guys that had to clean it. Yeah, that day sucked, but now it's hilarious. So, been a couple years.
You left the engine shed open at the smelter. All the heat's gonna get out.
Dude.
You know, mom's gonna be really upset. The bill's gonna be really expensive.
Right. Well, but the portable space heater's inside.
Is it?
Yeah, the 060.
Oh,
it's a space heater.
The engine shed down at the smelter. There's no engine in it.
Oh.
Yeah,
I haven't opened those doors. You left those open. Don't you tell mom on me.
Don't pass blame. That's not respectful, okay?
You were just passing blame yourself.
Just take it and go clean up.
Dad, Con's
How are you doing on the cordwood loading, by the way? How far along are you with the cordwood?
I'm loaded and I'm coming through the log loading platform at the logging camp right now. So. On my way to the sawmill.
Your switches will all be set down to the smelter, so you'll be good to...
Excellent. Well, okay, you did do something nice, so I guess you can be annoying and mean today.
I'm just pulling into the smelter now, actually.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
It's a long trek when you've got little wheels.
Yeah, I'm going to shove my cars back into the iron loading area with Betsy, and because that'll be fine, and then I'll pull them back out onto this track afterwards, and then I'll flick the switches so you can back into the cordwood area.
Awesome. It's going to be interesting to see if the Glenbrook is short enough to fit with 3 cars.
Well, if not, Betsy's down here.
Oh yeah, I guess Betsy could switch it out still.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, because you'll presumably be all loaded and ready by then, so you'll be waiting for more switching duties.
Yeah, hopefully.
Okay.
I don't know how much time we'll have here, but we're gonna back right in. You want to reverse yet, Betsy? Really? 22% reg? You can't move? Oh no, you can. Okay, you're good. Perfect.
I'm really loving this model of the Glenbrook. It's really pretty. And there's lots of little nerdy details in there that some of the other engines are missing that I appreciate. Like on that line that runs to the air compressor for the steam supply, there is the air compressor governor is located, which is not an appliance that's been modeled on a lot of the other engines, I don't think. Which is actually basically the mechanical device that tells the air compressor when to fire off again, because you can only hold so much in your main reservoir where all your air is stored. So if you get up to pressure, you have to shut the air pump off. So
you have a check valve on the main reservoir, right? So it doesn't overpressure, I would assume, like some sort of a pressure relief valve.
There's actually no pressure relief valve, at least on this era of stuff. Modern day engines do, but these ones didn't. They just relied on the governor, which had a feedback from the main reservoir to tell the pump to stop pumping, basically. So if you...
But how would that work? Because the pump pumps with steam pressure, so it would just be a pressure switch that shuts a valve.
Basically, yeah.
From getting into the compressor.
Yeah, so the governor is in the steam supply line to the air compressor. So the actual place the air compressor gets its boiler pressure from. And it looks at the main reservoir pressure, and if it exceeds the value that's set basically by a spring with a nut that can adjust the tension there, it's kind of like a feed valve. If it exceeds that pressure, it stops the steam supply to the air compressor. So once you get up to whatever it is, on these engines it wouldn't be that much, maybe 90 pounds or 100 pounds of main reservoir pressure, 100 psi. Which we have in the game. We have 100, so that's actually pretty accurate. Then it would shut off the air compressor, and the air compressor would no longer cycle.
And that steam that goes through the air compressor, that's just steam that's vented out to atmosphere? Like it's just
it vents out the stack. Yeah, in most locomotives. Yeah.
So it goes through the air compressor's piston, drives that with steam, and then vents out the stack.
Yeah, it runs out a line that is the exhaust line. Oil burning engines usually had it as a line behind the stack so that they didn't draft the fire. But the coal burning engines and wood burning engines, it was beneficial to run it through the saddle and have it come out the stack so it actually drafts the fire like the blower does, particularly on these little engines. And if you ever hear clips of the real Glenbrook working, when the air compressor cycles on that engine, it is beefy. It is like, doof. Doof. Every time it goes off.
And it was like it would be under 120 psi or whatever steam pressure in the boiler. So it would stay as steam, but it would cool down, I guess, as it loses energy through the system, or would it?
Yeah, it definitely cools down, but it doesn't expand all the way when it runs the piston. It doesn't cool down all the way, and it doesn't lose all its pressure. So it still comes out with a pretty significant velocity. And I mean, you can watch on our little engines like 20 and 346 just how hard they draft the fire by just the air compressor running. I mean, it's more effective than the blower usually is. It's kind of incredible.
But it would be in cycles.
Yeah, it's very cyclical, just like the engine itself is.
Yeah, so it would chuff. It wouldn't be a constant pressure or anything. It would chuff.
No, yeah, usually you'll hear the little engines with the single stage pumps, which is what Eureka and Glenbrook have, where it's just one and single stage, meaning it doesn't reuse the steam. They just go boom, or they'll go boom, 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 boom as they go up, down, up, down. Later engines and bigger engines in steam era had what were called compound pumps, where they reused the steam once. So you have a high pressure steam cylinder, they reuse the steam in the low pressure steam cylinder, and then they exhaust it. And so those use the steam in a more economical way. You get more air and more air pressure more quickly, and a much more efficient use of steam. And you don't draft the fire as hard because you've used the steam's energy before it goes out the stack significantly more. And those engines were typically so much bigger that the fire grate area was a lot bigger, so you weren't drafting each little square inch of coal as hard as you were on these little engines.
pressurizing end, the air side of that system, right? Because you obviously have your steam driving a piston. On the air side, is it just another piston?
Just another piston. Yep.
It's just driving a fixed volume of air into the reservoir every time.
Correct. Yeah.
Okay. I know some things. I used to work. So when I worked in automotive, one of the most significant things I did when I was working in automotive was working in automotive painting, more specifically than anything else. I worked with paint robots and robots that painted at like actual, factories and all that.
Before you said robots, I was gonna be like, yo, you want to come respray the GTO with me, dude?
I mean, I can probably hand spray pretty decently compared to some people, but like, because we did do a bit of airbrush work.
Okay, so you want to come respray the GTO?
Well, it was like on like sample panels and stuff, right? So like back when we were like testing new paint colors and stuff, we'd take like a sample panel, we'd go to a manual spray booth, and we would just spray it and just see what it came up as. So it'd be like a 2 foot by 2 foot panel. But when we were cooking cars, it was with fixed volume gear pumps is how we moved paint.
Oh, interesting.
So how that works for people is it's basically a motor with two gears, and as the gears rotate inside the fluid, every time the gear goes through, there's a little gap between the gears, which pushes a fixed amount of fluid on each little tooth, basically. And they were really cool. We had some fixed flow rate piston pumps as well, which were hilarious because when they were running, they would be like, and you just hear them like you'd go into so. It's kind of weird, okay? Every robot has they have a pump at the robot head, but then they also have this big room of valves downstairs. So there'd be like 60 some individual lines running to each robot, and that's all the different paints, right?
Oh, cool.
And the robot can pick which paint it wants to use. So you'd run a purge cycle, and the robot would basically, there's maybe 6 feet of line from where the valve selection happens to where the paint gun tip is. And you'd run a purge cycle with just a whole bajillion solvent in that to purge that out. And then you would run this gear pump with whatever valve of whatever paint you were selecting. But in the basement, to keep the paint lines pressurized, were these big piston pumps. And it was like a room of 60 drums, just full of these things going. And then you'd have the gear pumps at each of the robot heads, and that would be what sprays the paint out. It was just really cool stuff. But pushing fluids. That's why I asked about steam pressure stuff, because it's actually pretty much the same technology.
Shockingly similar, yeah. I bet a lot of that tech was gleaned from these.
Yeah, it's just not driven by steam anymore. It's driven by electricity, and then that drives, a motor or whatever, and drives a piston.
That's really cool. Today I learned some neat things about automotive manufacturing.
Yep, it's cool stuff. And then we cooked it in an oven. I've seen some stuff happen in ovens. The ovens are at about 350, 400 degrees.
Celsius, I assume?
Fahrenheit.
Oh, Fahrenheit, okay.
I believe they go up to 600 in some zones. It depends. It's really hard to say because there's all these trade secrets about it, because there's different zones of the oven. So when your car first comes out of the booth, some people they'll do what's called a flash zone. So they'll basically, they'll paint the different layers. You've got your primer layer, and then you've got your base coats, your clear coats, right? And most processes 3, 4, 5 layers, couple base, one primer, couple base coats, couple clear coats, etc. And it's really a trade, different manufacturers will do it differently, how hot their oven is, how many ovens they have. Do they do an oven after primer? Do they go primer straight to base coat? Do they do a flash zone, which is these big infrared lights that kind of cook it as it goes through? So all that sort of hush hush, we don't really want to talk about it type thing.
Gotcha.
It's trade secrets on how to make good paint. But anyway, there's the oven at the last place I worked at, it was 450, 500, 600 degrees in some zones, depending on, the length of the oven. And to walk through the full oven, after the painting, is about 2 hours at line speed.
Oh, wow.
So if you want to walk through it, you're gonna just be I had to do that before. We would assemble new parts. We would not when it's on, obviously, because we're not idiots, but when we would assemble a new part and we'd put it in, we had to make sure the part could fit through the whole oven, because it's running on a conveyor line, right? Like a big chain. And so you'd have to basically shut the oven down, wait 48 hours for it to cool off, and then come in on a late Sunday and walk through the whole oven before they fire it back up again. And you're walking through it, and it's pitch black. You're in a full suit, a full paint suit type deal. And it's pitch black. You got a flashlight. There's 2 of you, and there's basically the 2 of you in the oven walking on either side to make sure the part doesn't have any interference with anything as it goes around the corner. And then you got a third guy outside on the emergency stop for the conveyor on your radio. That's it. And you just walk through.
Goodness. So awesome. What size of part are you talking about? Are you talking about a body panel, or
Yeah, full bumper of a car, body panel.
Okay, so you're not
doors.
taking like new cars through this to get
Oh
painted.
no, so it depends. So when I worked, the last place I worked at, we were making parts. So we were doing bumpers. The biggest parts we made were hoods, entire hoods for a car, in one straight shot. But when I worked at GM, the oven fits a full car, like actual.
Okay, I'm rolling towards you with the cordwood cars. So
you need to flick your switch to go to the right.
Oh, okay. Well, I guess I could
right,
stuff
your
them.
left? Yeah,
I could
I'm
stuff
good
them
to
in
go. We're all loaded up.
there. Okay.
So I will eventually drag this out once you.
I was gonna say it would have made if you
go.
just come grab the cars off of me and then you go. I'll just
True.
stop and then you can.
You still have to turn around though, don't you?
Yes, I do. But you can grab these cars and start doing switching, and then I can go turn around,
Perfect.
and then I can grab those cars afterwards. I'll have to run around them afterwards, but that'll just work.
Did you hitch that at all?
I
Oh,
did.
you Perfect.
You got it. Let me go unhitch from up here.
Yeah, the manufacturing of different things is very interesting. But it was just when you were talking about piston pumps there, it got me reminding of all the good old days of dealing with paint pumps and paint pressures and
That's
when
fun.
lines get
That's
clogged
cool.
and 60 psi. One time we blew up a line. That was fun.
Oh no.
Robots use air pressure to direct the paint flow. They have a series of nozzles around the end, so the paint comes out of the center nozzle, and then you have a series of like high pressure air nozzles that'll allow you to direct the paint. It's called fan pressure, and it lets you basically control like the shape of the paint, right? The shape of the paint spray, and obviously that's like extremely useful because you want to be able to manipulate how wide the flow is, how much flow rate, all sorts of stuff, etc., right? But those airlines, we were doing a test one time. And we were trying to see if nitrogen would work better in airlines rather than oxygen, rather than just a regular air mix. So your regular air mix is like 70% nitrogen, like 25% oxygen, whatever, bunch of other crap, all that, right? And you pump that in, you pressurize it to like, I think it's like 60 PSI or something, or 45 PSI, and that's your fan pressure. But we thought, well, if you heat up nitrogen, and you heat up nitrogen to like 60, 70 degrees Celsius, and then you spray that pure nitrogen, which you can do. You could just get it's like a big filter, and it filters out all the other stuff from the air. It does the opposite. It filters out the nitrogen because nitrogen's a bigger molecule, and it keeps all the other stuff in the air. And then it allows you to basically pull out pure nitrogen. And the advantage of pure nitrogen compared to air is bigger molecule, less prone to leaks, and more consistent shape, right?
Okay.
So we thought if you heat nitrogen up to like 60, 70, 80 Celsius, and then you run it through this system, you'll have a more consistent fan, and it'll look better, and it'll give you a more consistent paint spray, right?
Okay. Makes sense.
So anyway, we did that. We had this preheater, and we had a nitrogen filter, and we were preheating nitrogen in this little filter, and we were running it and everything else. And we kind of forgot that the heater needed to shut off if there was no flow rate.
Right. Okay.
Because it has a little heating chamber. So we ended up heating up nitrogen in the chamber to like 200 Celsius.
Oopsie.
And then when we went to like purge it through the line, it just blew up every line between like because it's really hot and under pressure. So it went, oh, I'm hot and pressurized, so I need to expand very fast as soon as I have space to do it.
Yep.
Sure enough, little syringe type plastic tubing, that little plastic like syringe tube, it's not strong enough to hold back hot pressurized gas.
That's kaboom. Yeah.
Yeah, so it went kaboom. It was very exciting. It went kaboom very quickly. So yeah, anyway, that was good times. That was a fun adventure.
It's so fun to hear about paint from you. Paint comes up all of the time in my industry and preservation of railroad stuff. Because it's one of the biggest debates on like what colors locomotives were, what was the real color, because there's sometimes you can get original paint or like an original
oil-based kind of, or
oh god, it was all lead-based back in the day, but yeah.
No.
Choosing what paint to use, getting the right color, getting the right sheen, make sure it dries and applies right and everything. I mean, it's a huge challenge, and we're not like super paint experts by any means, so it's always interesting, one of the challenges. And we almost always have folks say, oh, you got that color wrong after we paint something at the museum. But these days we've been getting stuff
I
like...
made multiple mistakes. Oh, I can fix this.
Did you paint a cup?
I bonked too hard, and Betsy just got completely squished.
Oh no! Pancake Betsy!
And then I thought, well, I can just delete the end of line piece.
Uh-oh.
And
did you delete Betsy?
And no, I didn't do that. I'm not that bad. But I thought I could delete the end of line piece, and if I delete that, then I'll have room to put an extra track and throw Betsy back on behind it, and it'll be good. And then it actually derailed the last car. Don't worry, I'm fixing it all. It's fine.
Pee in a cup. Pee in a cup.
Yeah, this would be a pee.
I'll have you know, we were pee cup free last episode, including me, and this episode only you've peed in a cup so far.
Well, this episode, the problem is we're getting so distracted because we're talking about like poop and robots. So
well, poop and robots and paint and all the good stuff, man.
That's interesting. It's lead-based. In modern cars, surprisingly enough, most of the paints I worked with were not water-based; they were solvent-based.
Okay.
So like it's like paint thinner. It's actually like I think it's isocyanate is what it is.
Okay.
Long story short, it will harden your lungs if you inhale it as a liquid.
Yeah, that's bad stuff. Most
right.
paints that are put on industrial stuff are pretty gnarly. So wear your PPE, kids.
So it's like the paints that I worked with, I'm pretty sure it was isocyanate. Someone's gonna probably correct me and know what the actual chemical. Again, it depends on the manufacturer, but I'm pretty sure they were isocyanate, and they would only like cure, like solidify, if you had like 450 or 500 degrees or something like that. So if you just get like whenever you go and this is always the funny part, whenever people get like these automotive touch-up paints, I always kind of laugh because it's like no matter what, like even if you have an automotive touch-up paint that's color matched by the manufacturer, it's not ever going to be the same chemical compound. Like you're not going to be able to buy the actual isocyanate
thing that they shoot,
that they're using. So, I mean, it's never going to be perfect, but.
Yeah, I had to do some touch-up on the GTO after some idiot may have contacted the garage door a little bit.
Was it you?
Yeah, it was me. That was one of my worst days as a project car owner, because the GTO was a really decent 15-footer. You know, looked pretty solid from about 15 feet away. And then after, you put the fancy swoosh of a 1990s beverage container on the side of it, it doesn't look near as good anymore.
Yeah, I get that.
So yeah, I got one of those automotive touch-up paint kits, and I mean, if you don't look too close, it still looks fine. But yeah,
so I can guarantee you, part of my job was to do. I don't know why we're talking about so much paint rather than trains. But anyway, welcome to trains. We're going to talk about cars.
Yeah, welcome.
So part of my job when I was working as a paint engineer was to actually do color analysis. And as lame as that sounds, there's actually a lot of ridiculous science that goes into it. And what it comes down to is you're manufacturing a part is somewhere in the world, right? And you have to match that part to the color of a car that's being built somewhere else in the world.
That sounds like a nightmare.
Oh, it is. Trust me. And it depends on the person you're working for. I love American-made cars. I really do. I love European-made cars. Out of all the customers I ever worked with, Ford was the freaking worst.
Oh, really?
Oh my god. Oh my, it was so there's these things called color standards, right? And the way it works is you have this machine, and the machine reads the all sorts of stuff about color. You've probably heard of like luminosity and like reflectiveness and glossiness and all that crap, right? And a bajillion stats about color that people will look at. And basically there's this machine, and you press it up flat against a part, and what it does is it reads at 3 different angles. It reads it at 15 degrees, 25 degrees, and 75 degrees. And it reads all these different settings at all those angles, which tells you exactly like what color it is, like RGB, all that stuff. It tells you exactly how much luminosity it's got, the glossiness, reflectiveness, blah, 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 all this nonsense, right? And those numbers have to be within a very specific tolerance. And if you have them within a tolerance, that's considered matching the next color, right? So the manufacturer has their tolerance, and they send it to us. And then they go, you have to match this with whatever you make. Doesn't matter, right? And you have to match it at these specific parts, like these specific areas of the part. That's where we want you to match it. Like mainly where for example, where your front fender panels meet your car quarter panel. They want that to be a good match point. Where your hood meets your front bumper, that has to be a good match point.
So it looks seamless. It doesn't look like a color change.
These are places that people generally look. If you have the underside of like the side trim not matching the underside, they're not going to care as much, right? Don't care
as much, yeah.
It's generally, and actually most cars, if you look underneath them, they probably have some thin paint or edge drips in certain spots. I could probably point out 6,000 defects on any brand new car. There's just stuff that's considered acceptable defects, right? But anyway, long story short, Ford, oh my God, they would change their color standard like every day. Like they would change their color standard as much as I changed my underwear. It was really bad. And like,
Goodness.
and so like every day you'd come in and they're like, oh yeah, they rejected this shipment of parts. And so like you'd ship the parts, and in this case, the plant was in Mexico. So you ship the parts all the way to Mexico. They get down to Mexico and they say, this color doesn't match. And then they try and ship them back. And you're like, guys, this color matched the standard you gave us like 3 months ago. And they're like, yeah, well, we updated the standard to this new standard. And we're like, okay, did you give us the new standard? They're like, no. And we're like, okay, so what were you expecting? And then like a week later, they're like, oh yeah, someone sneezed and changed the paint color, so we're going with that now, and you guys just have to sort of deal with it and change your paint colors now. It is every week. It was so bad.
That's insane. And then they would expect you to like hold to it for stuff they'd already ordered or asked for.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
That is
you have a contract.
insane.
So everything in automotive is believe it or not, when you build a car, like a Ford builds a car, or GM builds a car, or you know, any company, Chevrolet, which I know is just GM, or you know, Toyota, any of those guys, no car is built 100% by the manufacturer. Everything's like outsourced to all these different suppliers, right? Because, you know, manufacturing and all that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, if you're the supplier, you are literally at the mercy of the contract holder. The OEM, they have the contract. They say, we're going to give you 500,000 parts a year. That's what we want coming out of you. 500,000 of these parts. You have to bend over backwards to do whatever they ask. It doesn't matter how ridiculous it is. You just have to do it.
That's kind of insane. I'm glad I don't work in that industry.
It's fun. It's just very stressful all the time.
That's a definition for fun.
Yeah, no, exactly.
Okay, I'm spun around and pinned into the rails over here, by the way.
Yeah, I'm still shunting, man. This smelter business could be a full-time job.
I need to get a bid job smelter run for sure.
Anyway, no one will know the companies that I actually worked for, except, well, I worked for GM once. I've said that a few times, but yeah. Your car's great. I don't think I'm violating any NDAs. I don't think I'm under any NDAs anymore.
Probably
to be honest.
not at this point. Yeah.
I mean, what could they honest? Everything is like changed so much. Yeah.
Okay.
Good times though. It was a riot to work in that industry. Very fast paced.
I can only imagine.
Yeah, you are working a lot and very constantly, and you know, at GM we were producing a car every 55 seconds. Per line, and they have 2 lines, so you know that's it. And everyone's gonna be like, well, how do you produce a car every 55 seconds? And it's like, it's called rolling assembly. You know, the first car, it's not 55 seconds to make a car from start to finish. It's 55 seconds
making a bunch of cars all at once.
Right.
Yeah.
They're all rolling. So one car is 99% done, one's 98, 97, etc., all the way down to 0, right? And they,
from start to finish for assembly, you know?
It was 16 hours from start to finish.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense.
Where I worked, yeah.
But getting this little read into this, now I know why when I want to try and get something custom ordered, none of the manufacturers want to do it.
Well, so here's the interesting thing. Service order contracts are interesting. We need to find an automotive game, okay? And then
we'll talk about car.
I could be the expert on all the automotive manufacturers. Let's find a game. Let's build automotive factories together.
Con will play the part of Heist, and I will sit here and be like, man, that's so cool.
So most service order contracts, because you're talking service order contracts, so when you finish building a part, they have all these molds and dies and everything else for those parts, right? Like if you think of like any body panel for a car, there's a series of dies and molds that make that body panel, and they don't just get rid of them. So they usually get sold to a service order company. And sometimes the manufacturer does it themselves, sometimes they don't, it depends on who they are. We had a bunch of service order parts at one of the companies I worked for, and basically what it is it's a 7-year contract. So if the car model goes from 2015 to 2020, and after 2020 they're like, we're done making this car, they will still make service parts for generally 7 years, I believe what the requirement is. I don't know if it's legal or not, like if there's a legal requirement for 7 years, but generally that's what I've heard is 7 years. And then even then after that, usually what happens is after 7 years, the dies get sold to somebody else who will just like continue it if they feel like it. You know what I mean? It really depends. Like if you look at, like, for example, like a Honda Civic, there's probably 18 million people who have just mapped the parts themselves and made tools to build more parts. You know what I mean? Like it's... it's not like it's a trade secret. You can take your car and dimension it if you have the right equipment, right? Like it's,
Not
but
rocket
yeah,
surgery.
there is a service order contract for pretty much everything you make, and usually it was 7 years, is what I remember.
Huh.
A service order is a fun time. They don't you don't have to do as much work to the parts. When we were doing service order parts, they were never painted. They were only ever primed. And we'd never actually paint service order parts because you don't know if the lady smashing her car or the dude who like wraps his car around a telephone pole
Had a black or red or
black or red or white or whatever. You're just like, screw it, we'll give them a primed part and they can paint it later at a body shop, right? So yeah, good times. You want to kick this and then bring Betsy?
Sure, why not?
Might as well kick it. You got space.
You wanna pull the pin?
Pin's pulled.
Okay.
Why does it feel like I have a brake?
I don't know. It did feel like a heavy consist.
I definitely have a brake on.
Okay, well, I'll come
there we
kick
go.
it again because I ran past the switch I need to go to anyways because the controls in the cab don't work right after you've been in the
perfect.
UI for some reason. So
We're still good. We're slowly moving. Another little
dunk.
hurt. Okay, that was a little aggressive, but
That's fine. I said dunk.
yeah, true story. Fun stuff. I loved working in manufacturing.
Yeah, it sounds like a really neat field. For me, it
If
was
you're
like
an engineer who likes cool tech, it's really cool.
I can only imagine because everyone's always looking to save, a buck here or a penny here,
Yeah.
and so how can we make things more efficient, faster, better, something?
Well, it's just like the sheer scale of some of these factories is insane. Like it's just the size of the equipment, the size of the facility. I mean, they're basically cities, they have their own fire departments, their own medical
They're insane.
places.
Yeah.
They have their own like restaurants, they have their own delivery services. Like, some of them will even have their own laundry services and stuff. Like they're literally cities, within a facility. And yeah, it's pretty cool, some of the technology used to make other technology is really exciting.
That's fascinating.
Yeah.
I used
so
to
welcome
live-
back to trains, everybody.
Yeah.
We're not gonna
We're trains. We're doing train things. We're
Start off
not
the episode
doing
talking
not
about
train things.
And now we're not.
We're back on the Tahoe, bro. The
Do
Tahoe,
you just
bro.
normally leave the firebox door open? Is that just
I mean,
normal
she
operating
was
practice?
close to lifting the safety because she's been lifting the safety for the past hour and a half because the steam sim is whatever. So, just leaving it open. It's fine.
Is that actually how you bleed heat out of the firebox?
Oh,
You
for
just-
sure. Yeah. If you're close to
open it
popping the
up?
safety valve, you just leave the door open.
Interesting.
Usually works pretty well. And try not to do it while you're working or anything, but if you're sitting for, like at Polar Express, we end up sitting between shows for like 30 or 45 minutes while they're doing like pre-show stuff and the start of the performance for all the guests, which isn't on the train.
Is it a performance like people ride the train, or is it a performance like you look at the train as it goes by type thing?
Yes, we do a big
both.
grand entrance to show off the train and everything, but then people also ride the train and they go to the North Pole and it's exciting.
cool.
That'll do. Okay, and hang on, keep coming. I had to remove a second link.
Oh, okay.
We were dual linked. Come back, con. Okay, almost there. Dunk, good. Take it, Mayhead. I gotta go find a break. But anyway, we sit for like 45 minutes, and it is a really tough balance to get a coal burner to be happy and quieted down to sit for 30 or 40 minutes without building a bunch of water up in it or something, or having the fire be too hot or building a bunch of pressure. So usually you'll end up kicking the door open if you need to and just letting it sit and bleed and heat that way.
But then you just don't shovel for a while, I guess.
Oh yeah, you don't shovel till it's about till you see the whites of their eyes, You wait for it you wait for I don't know, a good until you're maybe 5 minutes out
we
to
do this
heat it.
in this game. Obviously, boiler pressure is a number.
Yep.
And works on a pretty simple formula. Open reg boiler pressure goes down. If you had no heat, but you had 130 psi boiler pressure like we have,
Yep.
and you opened up the regulator, how long would that pressure last before you're dead on pressure?
Depends on the size of the engine and what you're trying to pull. But surprisingly long is the answer.
Like it won't just be like you're out, you're done. Like it'll.
Oh
actually
God, no,
run for
no.
Like 10
So
minutes or whatever.
So with 491, like if you're pulling a train, I mean, if your fire's not up to snuff and you're going uphill, you can lose 15, 20 psi in a couple hundred yards.
Right.
So that can happen pretty quick. But if you're putting around light engine, it can be a long time. We once had 491 try and run away on us, which was a bad day, where there was an issue with the throttle that we had to fix, which is a story that I will eventually tell on the channel. Anyway, we had to blow the engine dry. We had to blow all the steam out of it and all the water out of it. So we capped the stack, let the fire die completely out, dump the fire out, so there's no chance of having any heat or any extra heat that would be too hot to interfere with the crown sheet or anything. And then we would open the blowdown valve, which opens basically a 3-inch hole in the side of the boiler. And we would let it run for about 8 seconds and shut it off for about 8 seconds so that there was no chance of like a crazy vortex or anything being made and any chance of shenanigans in the boiler. Good standard practice. And it took us like an hour to blow all the steam out of doing that. 8 seconds on, 8 seconds off. So
that's pretty good.
That's pretty good. I mean, in 491s, she's not huge, but she's huge on the narrow gauge. But for a steam engine, she's not that big.
And when you guys store these things at night, or will you store them for more than a day? Like, or I guess even at night, if you're storing it just overnight to fire it up the next day, you'll bleed the whole boiler pressure. Or
oh God, no! You
just bleed it down a little bit and then
you let the fire die, and you fill it up with as much water as you can really get into it, so that it doesn't boil off everything, and you have enough room to fire up the next day.
Though.
Yeah, use it with the injector. You inject as much boiler or water in as you can. Usually we go up to the top of the glass on level in the shop. At the very minimum, sometimes we'll do a little bit more. It just depends, and if stuff leaks or something, because as they run in service and you have a lot of service days on them, valves will get mad and start to leak a little bit and stuff, and that increases the amount of water the engine uses overnight. And you need to have enough water to be able to safely fire it up the next morning, so kind of have to know how much it's going to use. So we fill them up all the way, let the fire die out, and you usually let the pressure come down just so that in the odd event that the fire wasn't as died back as you thought, you're not going to end up popping the safety valve, because popping the safety valve in the shop is a great way to make everything in the shop wet and humid, and machinery and machine tools don't like that, so it's a good way to make everything in the shop rusty. Ask me how I know. Spoilers. We have
your valve.
We have the safety pop in the shop a couple times. So yeah, it's a bad time.
I noticed that this engine here, the Glenbrook, has a blind driver in the middle as well.
She does. The number 2 is blind on this, just like it is on the 20 that was in that video that I just put out.
And I was thinking about it when I was thinking about the blind driver conversation we have, and I saw you did another video on it. Is there a standard for number of blind versus non-blind drivers required to keep an engine on the track?
Surprisingly, no. And to quote,
if they feel like it, they're like really, you only need one flanged wheel on the front, one flanged wheel on the back. You could have blind everywhere else.
And that is what the 346 has. Really? 346 is our other operable engine. It's down getting its 15-year rebuild right now, so that's why we haven't gotten to feature it on the channel yet, which is sad because she's one of my sweethearts. She's the reason I moved out to Colorado in the first place, actually. But she's a 280, so an extra set of drivers compared to the Glenbrook. And her front driver has a flange, and her rear driver has a flange, and the 2 in the middle are blind.
Wow.
So to quote my friend Sonny, and now you know why these little engines ended up upside down in the river all the time. Because if you lost the lead truck, you lost one driver. There was nothing that was holding you on the railroad anymore.
Yeah, no, that's it. You were gone.
Yep. So, but they needed that for some of the curvature. And even at the museum, I've got a picture that I'll have to dig up of 346 sitting on a curve at the museum, and the blind drivers are almost halfway off the inside of the rail. Like half of the width of the driver is past the edge of the rail. It's kind of incredible just how much they use that.
That's crazy. Were they all, do you have any engines at your, at the museum there? We gotta flip the switch, by the way.
We do?
Do you have any engines at the museum that are, like two axle trolleys, or, tenders?
2-axle tenders, no.
Like just 4-wheel tenders?
Two axle 4-wheel tenders did not last terribly long, so... okay, no, I did lie to you. We do have, technically, there's 2 engines on display that aren't ours. They're owned by a private person, private individual, and they're West Side Shays, so that's why they didn't pop in my head right away. But they're called a Class C Shay, where they have a tender that has powered axles under it, but they're technically a four-wheel tender.
So wait, you could, if I like owned a train,
Yeah.
I could just be like, yo, can you store my train at your museum?
I mean,
And, like-
that is a conversation you could have, and if management approves, then that can be a thing, and that's what happened back in the day. The individual that owns the two Shays used to operate a tourist railroad here in Colorado. He used to be the operator for the Georgetown Loop, where the engines ran, and he sold it or something. I don't know exactly what happened, but I believe he sold the loop, but still had the equipment, and we were nearby and agreed to store the equipment for him and put it on display. So it's a little mutual thing, and I think one of them is actually for sale, and the other one's on lease, but they're definitely expensive because they're locomotives.
For couple million buy a Shay?
A couple $100,000. I think they're close to $1 million. I think, but yeah, you could buy a Shay if you want. You know, if you got a casual.
Close to well,
like,
I mean, heist.
$1 million
I don't know why you haven't
lying
bought a
around.
Shay yet. I mean, everybody knows you're a millionaire. So get on
Right.
that Shay, man.
Right, you do know how much a non-profit organization pays, right? It's
Enough
not
to buy a
much.
Shay, apparently, is what I'm hearing. So
No, enough to put one on display when somebody else owns it.
Oh, right.
See, there you go.
want your Shay on display? Call me today.
Dude, these rhymes. We gotta get the.
1-800, hey,
do we want to
hey.
get this switch, or I guess it doesn't
Well, I mean,
matter.
it's just a loop. I mean,
It is just a
doesn't
loop.
matter.
Well, you made me throw the other switch. Now it feels pointless to have made me throw the other switch.
Well,
Whatever.
we can actually, you can go ahead and we can go down a lane that's open and drop the Corbin cars.
Oh, that's smart. Okay. Yeah, let me.
I'm full brake right now.
I'm trying to run past
So
you.
just pick a lane there.
You have more render distance than me, sir. Which lane's open?
Far left, third.
Third one. Okay. Well, there's a caboose on the second
No,
one.
fourth. Third in from the main. Yeah, fourth one.
The one that
sixth
you're
lane.
lined into now.
Yeah.
Okay.
I was thinking about this too because we were talking about humping the other day, and what?
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 What did you?
What? I was doing 30 reg. What the heck happened?
That's You know, I would love to give you that peek up, but I'm gonna give that one to QMA.
What the heck?
The switch is lined this way now, but
How
neither
did it
of us
line-
were anywhere near. A ghost! A ghost!
A ghost through this. What the dude? I was literally just chugging along at like 30, and then all of a sudden it died. What the? Anyway,
30 reg.
That was fun.
30% reg. Not even 30 mile an hour. You're doing like 8 mile an hour.
30. Wow, that was sick. What a great derailment. Cool.
Yeah. The game said Colin was making fun of me for peeing in cups.
I guess we're going this way now. Do we don't have Betsy on the back, right? Because Betsy's
Betsy's got. This is we have the Zuma. I can go grab the Zuma and grab the
Zuma's got
consist,
stake flats on her. I can back this up.
or you could back it up. You could back it up, and then we could have cars on front, cars on back, and just be very confused.
Or we can just run around.
Or we could just run around. Yeah.
Yeah, let's just do. That was not my fault.
That was legitimately. I will give you points on not derailing there, sir.
Sorry about that. Back to our regularly scheduled.
Yep. Yep.
There. I don't broadcast. I don't know how that happened, dude. That was
an interesting one. Oh,
Yeah.
That was a very new one for.
the whole train was already through the switch, and then it was like, yo, we're just gonna derail.
We're just throwing the switch now. It's fine. Yep.
Yeah, no big deal.
And I went to
Wow.
throw the switch back, and the car that was on the switch derailed again.
Anyway,
So
I was thinking about the hump yard thing, right?
Hump
We were talking
yards,
about
yes.
Hump yard, right? And when we had first talked about hump yards in Railroads Online, I was kind of concerned because we were like, well, what's the purpose of a hump yard? Because the real purpose is sort of to use it in a distribution area where you'd have a bunch of different products that have a bunch of different destinations. They all come in, they get humped, and then they get sent off to their appropriate destination and assembled into trains.
Precisely.
To their destination. Right. And we don't really have a reason to do that in railroads because we're not bringing all our products back to the main to store them here full. We're bringing them straight to their destination.
everything is unit trains. Yeah.
Right. But consistently, whenever we come back to the freight depot, we have a train of empties, and we always have to store them on one of these lines. But if we turn this into an empty hump line, where we could hump our empties, then we could sort our empties by type, and have them all assembled in different lanes. Like, here's your lane of log cars, here's your lane of stake flats, here's your lane of cordwood, etc. And then that way, when we need to pick up a new train, you come into the front of the hump, grab whatever you need, cut your empties, and be like, I want to cut 10 cars, 12 cars, whatever, and then we can always hump them back into the appropriate lane.
I like the sounds of that.
That was the only reason I could think we would ever need a hump yard is if we were actually humping empties.
My game crashed. My game crashed because I was just about to talk some smack about the Glenbrook's implementation because I noticed something and it wanted me silenced.
Oh, okay. Well, I'm sorry to hear that.
But yeah, I'll be loading back in. But Glenbrook has an air brake hose for automatic air off the back of it, or it doesn't. It doesn't have the hose, but it has the valve where you would send air pressure out. But there's no hose. And it doesn't have actual air brakes implemented, so it's like, why is that there?
Could it be that the one that it was modeled after, you said the guy who modeled it works with an actual Glenbrook?
He did, and he modeled it ready to do knuckles and air brakes and everything. But it's just a question of it should probably not.
But that didn't come in until like what?
Yeah.
20s, 30s, 40s, 50s?
I don't know. You know, for the Glenbrook actually itself, the real Glenbrook never until preservation, when they had to, for the sake of running it for big events at the Cumbres and Toltec and having air brakes, they added the air pump and like, okay, I crashed again. I can't be close to you. You're scary. Yeah, so look, magically we're back. Nothing happened. There were no crashes. It's fine. It's fine.
Everything's re-railed. We're good.
Yep, train's back on track. But yeah, when they took the Glenbrook down to the Cumbres and Toltec, and I think they actually did it prior to that, they added air brakes to it. So they added the air pump and added brake lines and everything. So you can see on my screen, the angle cock is right here on the back of the tender. That's the fancy word for this is where your brake hose would go. So it's set up for automatic air there, but not necessarily in the cab.
Like toolbox looking thing?
No, it's this.
The one, I see it below.
The little guy that's sticking out to the right of where the link is.
Tab.
Yeah. So I don't know, Glenbrook never got it. I don't know when the Tahoe got air brakes and everything, presumably when it was modernized or when it was made required. So early 1900s, sometime in there, because these were little engines. So even Tahoe getting modernized, making it burn oil and everything, it didn't run that long that way.
Crazy to me that these are little engines.
Yeah, these are itty bitty. These are absolutely itty bitty. These are smaller. This has a third the tractive effort of the smallest engine we have that runs at my museum.
Well, la-di-da. Not everything's about tractive effort, okay?
Well, I'm okay. You know, sometimes it's about being pretty.
Sometimes women like it when you have small drivers, if you know what I mean.
Whoa. I think I'm picking up what you're putting down there, sir.
You know, it's not my fault that I was an 040 and not a 260, you know?
Right. Doing the roll and unload. We're gonna have dollars for days, man.
These are 20,000 pounds a piece, dude.
Oh my god, these are heavy. And Glenbrook just walked away with
800 pounds, yeah.
No issue. It's a good cheat you. It's nice to have a road engine that is worth a darn.
Yeah, we should really load it up with wood next time and bring it up to the iron mine and see what it can do.
Yeah, what can you do on the 6.5%?
Yeah,
what can you do, Glenbrook?
Wow, I made a lot of money. Okay, I'm up to like $1,600 again almost.
Oh my goodness. Yeah, rails are the moneymaker, not raw iron.
Yeah, rails, that is a profitable machine. Well, we could buy more plank cars.
That's probably a good idea.
You know, and then we could even double head the Montezuma and
the Glenbrook.
And the Glenbrook.
Yes, I like where this is going.
And then throw the helper on it as well when we get to the iron mine and bring up a whole load of we could go up to we're at 8 cars now. We could go up to 12 maybe and do some planked.
I like the sound of this. I like where your head's at. I think that's going to make a great next episode maybe.
If we're really, really hardcore, we bring the 4 hoppers from the smelter up too. Right.
Oh man, bring the empties.
And then load them and bring them down.
Those are so heavy though. Oh man, yeah,
they're empty. We'll have a helper. We could double it. We could,
we doubled the hill with 3 engines on the point.
Oh, yeah, why not, right? We might as well triple exactly. Well, but anyway, let us know what you guys think in the comments down below. Obviously a little bit of another long episode, but Glenbrook's here. I like this engine. It's actually nice.
It's a beautiful engine,
still funny.
Beautiful
We're
model.
Work up to the class 70, and then the class 70 is gonna put all this to shame. So
yeah, class 70.
Yeah,
it's fair amount more power than this. Yeah.
Yeah, but yeah, let us know what you guys think in the comments down below. Check out Heis's channel, link in the description. Like, subscribe, and don't don't leave your. I'm trying to think of like one of those like like the take your stick off the ice or whatever. But this is like don't leave your poop in a dirty engine. You know what I mean? Like
don't poop in a toilet that's already full.
Don't poop when the toilet's full.
Thanks so much for watching, everyone. Bye.